right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's installment of C-Suite Snacks. My name's Steve Ronan, the host of today's webinar and the leader of Citrin Cooperman's consulting and outsourcing practices. Every Thursday at noon, we bring you snack-sized insights on a timely topic delivered by experts in the field. In recent weeks, we've discussed HR considerations for opening offices with David Lewis, the practical new age of talent analytics with ADP, and state and local tax considerations for remote workers with Eugene from our SALT group. Today is the last in our mini HR series, and we're joined by Shaun Gagnon, partner at Cambridge Insurance Advisors, to discuss how to use benefits to attract and retain talent and ways to keep them cost-effective in a market of continually rising expenses. A few administrative reminders before we start. We accept questions throughout the webinar, so please locate the Q&A window on the bottom of your Zoom screen. This is where you can feel free to enter questions throughout the webinar. We will be saving time at the end of today's presentation to address the questions we receive. Additionally, we'll be doing our traditional snack basket giveaway, where a lucky attendee from today's session will win a craft basket of snacks. So stick around until the end to find out if you are today's winner. Finally, if you're here because you found it on our website or on social media, I encourage you to sign up for our mailing list to make sure you receive an invite for our new snack-sized topics each week. Please also visit our C-Suite Snacks Content Hub on our website. You can locate that on the top navigation ribbon to view the recordings and look through the decks of prior presentations. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Shaun to begin today's session. Shaun, take it away.
Morning, Steve. Thanks everyone for having me, or early afternoon on the East Coast. Appreciate the opportunity to speak and the topic. I think everyone's concerned with costs as they rise, how that impacts overall recruitment of employees, retention of employees as well. So I'm Shaun Gagnon, Cambridge Insurance Advisors, and happy to have a few moments to speak with you today. Maybe next slide. So quick agenda, we'll cover some opening remarks on benefits in general, what costs are, some survey results we've done. That bleeds into the employee opinions, the benefits culture piece. Why are your employees leaving or staying? The cost containment elements to be considerate of as you get into renewals or planning for making a change financing wise, and then some predictions on maybe where the future is going, benefits, and some things we're already seeing trending. So excited to have you. Next slide, please. Next slide. So just a snapshot here. This was a survey done by SHRM. What are the most popular employee perks? You see right there, paid vacation, coming in first at 98%. You have 401k plans at 93%, and then mental health at 83%. I'd say when you look at this slide, one main takeaway here, mental health benefits, the awareness and implementation of them both rising, I think for a lot of good reasons. Paid vacation ties into that work-life balance element, which is a thread that comes through very strongly in all of our conversations with employers or things we discuss from a strategic standpoint. And then obviously 401k when you look at what people are doing in their future and at some point retiring. So a little snapshot there. Next slide. And then big takeaway on this slide is when you look at what employers want to accomplish, 87% of them want better employee retention. So how do we go about accomplishing that? That's a lot of the strategy and dialogue we have, not only from a cost standpoint, but benefits and strategy communication. So the one thread that reigns through on this page is just what is your communication strategy? What's your employer brand? Once you have an employee and you're looking to retain them or empower them to grow throughout their career, what is that track? How are you communicating that? So I think all really important things outside of just purely what's the year-over-year cost increase or decrease on a benefit standpoint. These are a lot of soft things you can do to empower your employees, both to attract new ones and to keep those that you want on board as well. So next slide. Getting into the cost containment, I'll have you hop to the next slide. It's hard to predict cost containment or drive cost containment strategies and projecting where the increases will be without knowing where some of the larger claim elements lie. So when you look at this slide, couple takeaways here. This was some statistic pulled over the last couple of years. Cancer continues to be the most frequent large claim. You see cardiovascular claims up there as well, high blood pressure, diabetes. In a management stage, there's different programs you can do from a disease management standpoint to mitigate some of the impact of these ongoing chronic claims. Some of the larger shock claims, there are programmatic things as well. I think it gets into the skew of, are you serving your employees, looking at different wellness avenues that not only drive ROI, but help point out where some of your larger claims may lie so you can get out ahead of them before they come bad elements on your P&L as well. So next slide. I'll be going that, a couple hits there. So I think the biggest thing any company looks at, it's hard to address cost containment in a vacuum. So going in year over year or in your first year planning, having a defined strategy, understanding where pain lies today, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve. At Cambridge and in many other good consulting firms, I think the point of emphasis is not to be tied to any risk financing platform. So you see on that right-hand side of that first bucket there, all the different risk financing strategies you can deploy, and there's others as well, but everything from professional employer organizations through stop loss with different administrators, maybe a separate pharmacy benefit manager. There's a lot of different things you can do, but it first starts with sitting down at the table with all the key stakeholders, identifying where that pain lies today, establishing a plan, and then carrying that plan through for a multi-year approach. You're going to have a few good years where you have tremendous claim experience. You're going to have a rough claim year. That's just statistics. But if we have a multi-year plan, we can easily address those, find out where things are trending, get out ahead of large claims, and put you in a better position to be able to manage that cost year over year. Some things in the bottom right hand, you'll see trending, the direct primary care, the on-site clinics, and the reference-based pricings. Those are probably our seminars in their own, but direct primary care for sure is taking hold, as is the on-site clinics. Just easier access for your employees to procure care and see their doctors, get out ahead of their well checkups, and prevent those larger claims. Next slide. Few things we're doing well, as there are other consultants throughout the country doing well, trying to help small to mid-sized businesses buy above their company size. And what I mean by that is if we can band companies together, they can buy at the size of an Apple or a Microsoft, which gives them tremendous leverage in the buying market. So one of our programs has about 1,100 members, in aggregate about 325,000 lives. You'll see there about 410 million in premium. All that's good and well. The main takeaway is, again, at scale, you are able to procure insurance and reinsurance costs at a much more favorable number in terms than you would be standalone as a 50, 100, 120 person company, or even smaller companies than that. So see a lot of aggregation programs to buy at scale. Next slide. And then one of the biggest benefits to cost containment you'll see here outlined, I think it ties into that. What is your plan of attack going into a renewal? What are the vendors at the table that allow you to create an assembly line that drives outcomes that you want to achieve for your employees? So we're not tied to any one vendor. I mean, it basically is bringing best of class to each segment of your plan. That could be pharmacy cost containment with specialty drugs rising. We have different aggregation programs there to buy pharmacy specialty drugs that scale or carve them out of the program. We have the specialty networks that have discounts on MRIs or certain surgical costs. Analytics, we are huge proponents of that, driving predictors of where your risk factors lie and getting out ahead of some of those larger ongoing claims. Just the care coordination too. God forbid you have an employee go into a cancer claim. That's a really stressful situation. Stressful not only for HR if they know that's going on, but for the employee. So how are we helping them in that moment of claim drive the outcomes needed or the best care coordination as well? And then you'll hear me throughout this presentation on some of the regulatory compliance that ties in, just making sure your plan documents align with where you think claims are going to be paid and how they are in fact actually paid. And then population health management as well. There's a number of things we can do from wellness standpoint to other things we're building into plan to drive certain behaviors from where people are going, point of contact or using services. So main thing here is build the best assembly line possible for cost containment. Next slide. And then a few new concepts in the market. You'll see the ICRAs, the QSERAs. Those are some things trending recently. Think of them, and again, this is a one-off seminar. We could do 45 minutes alone on these two programs, but they're essentially expanded HRAs. So more favorable terms allow you to either offer this as one-off as your plan and set a defined contribution amount. So an employee can go to an ICRA and procure benefits, typically done through the private market. Think of that as individual. Certain states have better individual markets than others. QSERAs have some more restrictive terms, but both seeing upticks. Just another way and something else to throw in the blender from achieving the outcomes you want that skews a little bit from the traditional group healthcare plan. This is much more defined contribution, onus on the employee to go out and procure their plan. The benefit is they're actually picking a plan that hits all the checks the box for all the things they would like to see in a medical plan. So more to come on that stuff as well. You can go to our website. We have a bunch of tutorials or guides on ICHRAs and QSARAs. Next slide. So just, a piece that we go through with all clients or aspiring new partners. I mean, this is a yearly approach. So it's a 12-month rolling calendar. If you're in that multi-year approach, this is something we're doing every year, as well as any good consultant should be. Just making sure your goals are hit. We're doing everything, getting the data we need to predict underwriting, what the renewal is going to be, all the benchmarking data, the claim analytics, and then obviously doing effective renewal marking. And you need all that data to go out and actually get effective RFP results when you go out to different carriers or financing platforms. And then most importantly, at time of renewal, once plans are picked, what is that open enrollment strategy and how are you communicating open enrollment with your employees? Is there the education in place so they know the plans offered, they know any nuances, features you've built in year over year? I think if COVID has taught us anything, the craving for positive communication is there. Companies are spending a lot of money on their benefits package. Time and time again, we're walking into those situations where maybe the communication or education to employees has not been there. So we really harp on that. We want your employees to feel positive about the plans. Each one of you are spending a lot of money on these benefit programs. So, most importantly is probably communication outside of the strategy as well. Next slide. And then tremendous demands on meeting human capital today. We're in a pretty tight labor market, whether you're trying to recruit new employees for open jobs or trying to keep those that you want to retain, a ton of demands on you as the employer. So have you go to the next slide as we talk through some of the different elements. A lot of that is being hit with spending additional amounts from an HR standpoint on the technology. So you see there about 58% of the companies, spending more on technology that helps them attract and retain talent. The annualized number, if you just took it across the board, it's about $483 per employee per year that each company spends on technology. A lot of employee and development. If you have an employee you want to keep, what is that development path? Have you articulated what their career track is at your organization? I think that's a very key piece. And then improving the employer experience. I mean, I time and time again see employees leave or in their exit interviews, the takeaway is the employee experience at the organization or the culture wasn't exactly what the employee wanted to see. Just improving that, I think, will help with the retention, and about 38% on the workforce planning as well. So have you go to the next slide. And there's a lot of different solutions to accomplish the HR spend and landscape. There's a lot of different vendors that do a lot of different things. One of the areas we've gotten heavily involved in as an organization is just helping companies go through that due diligence phase, not having to sit on each and every one of these hour-long education calls on what the vendor actually does, narrowing that down for you, similar to how an organization like ours would help you select a medical carrier or a disease management program. We do a lot of education, streamline it down to 2 or 3 based on conversations we've had for you or what the means are. But end takeaway of this page is a lot of different vendors out there to do a lot of different things. Next slide. And then when you look at technology, the weaving in communication and overall benefit support, there's a lot of different mediums to handle that communication today. So whether you're doing it, at some point we're back to fully on site and doing those open enrollment meetings or communication meetings, tremendous online capabilities through different call-ins and helping employees walk through their benefit elections. There's tremendous self-service employee tools where they can help with decision support and ending up picking the best plans for their particular situation. But main takeaway is it's year-round. There's tons of technology that can help. It helps with employee engagement as well. The more you put in place from a technology standpoint to help drive certain behaviors on the benefits plan and the best outcomes for your employees. So hope you go to the next slide. And then some different things for predicting workforce trends and where we see some things going based on some statistics out there. I'll help you hop to the next slide. One of the biggest takeaways, work-life balance, work and health right now is completely intertwined. So many leaders of companies have misstepped saying, workforce, it's 7 hours a day, 24/7. That is not my belief. I think the more you sprinkle in work-life balance, every statistics I reviewed for our company or others, the more you empower work-life balance, you're going to see higher production rates. You're going to have a better company culture, better retention of your employees. I mean, it's all positive. If you just keep grinding, I think everyone's going to be on the wrong side of employees leaving your company sooner rather than later. So definitely the thread of work and health intertwined here. Next slide. And then just managing, over the last year, a lot of employees have left maybe where their company has traditionally been headquartered. So whether that is, in these charts, some of those states that are red from an influx, outflux standpoint, see a lot of folks moving to Florida. Folks have left California, New York, moving to different parts like Arizona, Texas, different centers that have fashioned themselves as, whether it be tech hubs or very employee-friendly company hubs, or all the different perks, work-life balance, and that is the driving thread. So the biggest challenge is managing all that movement from a compliance standpoint for you in HR or finance. And there's a lot of great tools to do that, as well as additional leave laws come out. So the next slide, if you hop to that, will show just all the different state, local, and paid sick leave laws that are going into place. I think this is soon to be blue across the board, where every state is going to have a leave law of some fashion. Maybe we even have a federal overlying law that controls some of this. But right now you see a number of states have either come out on plans or have plans to adopt state and local paid sick leave laws on the docket. So just continuing to manage that has been an area of business for us over the last year. Next slide. And then just really important statistics. I mean, we always try to harp on what are your employees saying? What do they want to see? So interesting stat here, because I think if you surveyed most people, people would think everyone's happy working from home and want to continue to do so if afforded the option, which is very true. But 94% of employees are saying they'd like to spend at least one day in the office each week. Where that becomes something to head on from a challenge standpoint is if now you're an organization that has primarily been based in New York and you have 50% of your workforce that has moved out of that area and they want an office environment. How do you manage that? How do you scale as an organization? So looking at the 94% is a big takeaway. I think it's going to be a hybrid model if I was to predict the future. We're not going back 5 days in the office, in my opinion. It's going to be some rotating schedule, maybe even rotating waves of employees, certain ones in on certain days, whether they're in a team that needs to collaborate or not. And then you have those opportunities for your whole company on site if you're doing different corporate culture events, things like that. But the other slide to the right-hand side, a little hard to read on this one, but just different levels of worry of those returning to the office as well. So broken up by age groups. I can blow this up a little bit and send it out later, but just showing different age demographics on the tolerance of people when they want to come back, or the level of worry of coming back into the office as well. So next slide. And then just COVID has driven a lot of different things, as we've gone through wave 1 and 2, maybe a potential wave 3 in terms of navigating COVID-19 and some of the benefits that have been at the forefront given COVID. Paid leave, EAPs, makes sense. More people in the hospital indemnity insurance has gotten a lot of press and adoption recently. And mental health, again, a huge wave of making sure your employees have outlets. It's a very stressful time. There's a lot of great companies' tools out there. My sentiment would be have an ongoing commitment and approach to mental health and wellness versus just a tool that maybe sees early high-level adoption and peters out. Put a consistent approach into having your employees have access to mental health tools as well. Same thing, sentiment going for benefit wellness plans. Put something that can sustain versus something that's just a shiny tool and maybe has 1 month of adoption, and after that, people forget about it. Constantly change that. There's a lot of things you can do from wellness. And I think shifting the vantage point of wellness, does it truly just drive ROI, or is it a piece of the culture? You can find a happy medium within both of those. I think you can accomplish both, quite honestly. Next slide. And then just the overall theme of transparency, whether it be fees and transparency of what folks like myself, other consultants are actually making to manage all these benefits. I would say request stewardship reports, understand what your consultant is making from a fee standpoint, but then also transparency of fees in terms of what different procedures cost as well. So this is a tool called Healthcare Blue Book. It allows you to take a snapshot of what is the low cost, what is the high cost, what is the happy medium of a fee schedule for a service you may be looking up. And this is a tool we provide, or you can procure on your own, but just gives employees the help to go out and understand what is viable cost. If an employee understands how to buy and get the best service for a fair price, that will have very positive impacts on your healthcare plan year over year. And that's something we push as well, is just employee education. So they have those tools. They want to make good buying decisions. For those that have higher deductible plans, this obviously is very close to the employee, because the more they spend on a benefit, the more they will eat into that deductible and have to come out of the pocket on their own if there's no HSA or HRA. So big proponents of transparency tools and continue to push that as well. We'll see continued adoption of that in the years to come as well. Next slide. And then just one of the last slides I have today, just again, a lot of things we see, they're already in the here and now. They just continue to trend in that hockey stick fashion, whether it be telemedicine here represented as more in the virtual health category, and looking at that as a tool for your employees really hits the care coordination, the ease of use. If an employee has a sore throat versus having to go into a doctor office setting, being able to call a doctor, get the right prescriptions potentially released to them and going to pick them up, just a much better care coordination saves a lot of time, not only for the end employee, but better ROI for the employer as well. The bottom right, that slide illustrates really the student loan repayment programs and the level of debt being carried by some of the millennials today, or those in their first 5 years of their careers, is tremendously burdensome. Just having the right tools, there's a lot of good programs out there that you can deploy as an employer that are very inexpensive in the grand scheme of things to help your employees with some of those repayment tools as well. Life and disability, just in this last year, when we probably went from a state of everyone feeling they're invincible to seeing some of their own mortality potentially, just having candid conversations about having the right life insurance or right disability in place. If you have a group of key employees that you're trying to ensure or protect, because God forbid something happens to them, it has a real negative impact on the company. There's things we can do there as well from a leadership benefit standpoint. Caregiver benefits, more and more people have different things going on at home and needing folks to take care of, whether it be children, significant others, elderly parents, grandparents. There's a lot of different caregiver tools coming to market. We're helping companies vet those solutions as well and just promote the overall awareness. And then mental health, again, key theme, driving adoption, helping employers understand what they can offer from a mental health benefit standpoint and how we can drive greater adoption. That'll continue to trend up. And then you see the pet slide represented there, pet insurance, but just the foster pet and folks that have gotten a pet over the last COVID year, those statistics have risen greatly as well. So if you want to retain your employees, I think these are all things to be considerate of outside of just the cost factor of what's the overall makeup of your benefit plan, and employees feel like when they come to your organization or remain at your organization, you have a good selection of benefits they can choose from. So these are all key components as well. Next slide. Really open it up, Steve, for any questions we have or anything to chat about at this stage.
Yeah, no, we're getting some good questions coming in, Shaun, and thanks for that. I know, you and I have even worked on some clients where some of these newer trends have become like very, very important to fixing, pretty tricky situations. That's important for both them and their employees. So great to get an overview of that today. Thank you. So a couple of things to react to. First is, one of our participants said one issue with health renewal is there are some employees, a few, who would opt to pay more for a different carrier. And it's hard for them, really, companies to often comply with their request. Any reaction to that or ways to kind of work around that challenge?
Yeah, I think it's just understanding what on your platform is available. So if you think about traditionally the professional employer organization, they typically may have one or two different carriers they're working with, depending on the geography of the organization. And there's a lot of different ways to structure, whether understanding it really is a preference over a Blue Cross Blue Shield or a Cigna, or is it really a plan design preference, and then structuring plan designs that hit different levels of the check the box for each employee. So there's a few different ways you can articulate that, depending on whether it's just purely a carrier issue or a plan design issue, but a lot of different things we can do to help employees have a number of different plan options or benefit designs for their employees.
Yeah, and with respect to that, Shaun, when we talk about, plan designs and platforms, like how should people be thinking of that in today's world? Does the size of a business impact it? Does industry impact it? Is it available? Are there more options available to more companies than they often realize? How should
I would say there's many more options, and there's different stigmas attached to different, I would call them funding strategies. So as a blanket statement, if I just said to 10 companies who are not self-funded today, let's self-fund, that's a very scary term. But if you start to understand that, identify some of the drivers of your claim cost, you may realize that self-funding for your organization is definitely the way to go, with some protectors around that, reinsurance, maybe some of the aggregate programs. Certain large employers may look at PEO and say, we're too large for that. coming back to that principle, maybe it is in fact the way to go because you're a multi-state operator. There's different nuances of the PEO landscape that makes sense for that organization. And then some companies that are self-funded today may look at fully insured and say we've completely outperformed that. But in truth, in reality, your claims may be at such an elevated level where fully insured is the way to go. And those are all the things we look at, kind of being agnostic to any funding strategy year over year. What is the best path forward as we've identified that multi-year approach? And I think it just takes into account making sure we understand what the employer's goals are, what our goals are as a quote unquote fiduciary of that plan design and financing structure. But there's long-winded way of saying, Steve, a lot of different ways to look at risk and finance risk.
Yeah, what I hear is it's really very dependent on the specific company, their employee pool and their risk profile, right? Even two identical companies of identical sizes might have to handle their platforms in completely different ways.
Yeah, and oftentimes we'll get different employers say, I have a friend at company XYZ and their benefits are so much more expensive or so much more cheaper. That is a loaded statement just from the standpoint, there could be 100 differences between those two organizations just because both of them are 110 employees or whatever that number is.
Well, in that spirit, I mean, are there any guidelines that you can give? I mean, this question we get all the time, right? What share of benefits do employers generally pay, or what would be benchmark or average? Is there any guidance available to help people answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of benchmarking, as good consultants have a ton of benchmarking to really narrow this down based on geography, industry. I would say if you just drew a line in the sand, about 70% for an individual contribution out from an employer standpoint to an individual benefit plan is pretty fair within benchmark. Once you get into covering dependents and employer contributions, it'll skew a little bit depending on the overall mission of that organization and the plans offered. And then some companies will contribute to a third-party type program, whether it be a health reimbursement arrangement, an HSA. Those things will also move the needle up if ongoing dollars are committed to helping offset deductible costs, things like that as well.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And I guess, to close it out for us, turning that into kind of a competitive advantage question, right? How should companies look at viewing their benefits planning process and platform decisions, from a hiring and a retention standpoint to make themselves more competitive in what is it, honestly, especially in a lot of the skilled areas that we work in, a very, very competitive talent marketplace right now.
100%. I mean, think about what your best asset is from a branding standpoint for your organization. It is your current employees. So starting as simply as saying, if you're not educating your current employees on the benefits and the dollars you're spending on that overall benefits plan to get a positive experience, if they bump into a friend or someone asks them or sees they work there on LinkedIn today, it's not terribly difficult to see where folks work. If they feel that call and say, well, I'm here because I really have no other options. The benefits stink, but the benefits in reality are great. Start with educating your own employees. So if they get that call, they're the best cheerleaders for your organization. And then once you're actually trying to attract or retain talent, making sure if you're in an interview process for a key employee that you want to hire and they've hit those other steps in your hiring process, make sure you go through them, what the benefits are. Have them maybe talk to a few other members, not only in the hiring committee, but of other employees to say, look, we have a great benefits program here, a great work-life culture. It all ties into that overall benefits feel, much more beyond just what is the dollar amount committed to a medical plan or what's the freebie happy hour you have. It's the whole ecosystem as well. So use your employees to your benefit from that standpoint, and make sure as an organization you're leading with everything you spend on benefits and you understand what you're spending on and the ROI you're getting.
That's great. It's great. And I think it's a great place to leave it for today, Shaun. So thanks very much for being with us. Shaun's contact information is up on the screen right now. Please feel free to reach out to him directly with additional questions or comments, or if you want him to take a look at any of your company's planning or current offerings. As always, this presentation and the deck will also be available on our website within a day or two to rewatch, to share, to use as a reference point. So Shaun, really appreciate it. Great insight today. Thank you for joining us. To everybody who joined us today, thank you. We hope this is a good primer on benefits. We'd encourage you to check out the other videos and webinars we've done in our HR series. Those are all available on our C-Suite portal, C-Suite Snacks portal on our website. So encourage you to check that out. The big moment, today's winner for our snack basket is Sarah Zimmerman from the Constitution Center. Congratulations, Sarah. We've been getting great reviews on these snack baskets recently, so we hope you enjoy yours as well, and somebody from our team will reach out to get shipping information. Coming up next week, April 22nd, again at 12 for a nice, concise half hour. We're going to be joined by John Giordano from our manufacturing and distribution practice. We're going to be talking about reducing risk and cost in the global supply chain. And we're going to follow that up on the 29th with Kenneth Lax to talk about tax structuring, more of a broad discussion around tax structuring and cost and compliance considerations for that. We are also running a Master Snack series on cryptocurrency right now. If you're interested in that, you can sign up for that on our website. And our Cyber Master Snack series is going to kick off in a couple of weeks, so keep a lookout for those emails. Once again, I'd like to thank you for being here today. Thank you for being on our mailing lists. Feel free to share with your friends, colleagues, peers, and other executives. We'd love to see everybody on this website every week, and would love to continue to grow the audience. So share, reach out with any questions that you have, and hopefully you have a great rest of your week, a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here next week at noon for John Giordano. Take care, everybody. Thanks again.